So, very quickly, because I know I'm talking to a group of people here who know a lot about this stuff because you've got your own lived experience and so on. But this is what we perceive to be here at Succeed, what neurodiversity is currently. That being said, and I always say this, it's really important we keep up to date, even when we're living with neurodiversity ourselves, isn't it? Because increasingly now, on diagrams like this one, I'm seeing a lot where people are putting mental health issues, they are putting epilepsy, putting menopause on diagrams like this. And I'm very comfortable with that because the spirit of neurodiversity for me is that nobody gets left behind. So, what we don't want is individuals who think, well, hang on a minute, I've got dyslexia and I also have epilepsy. I see my dyslexia here, but I don't see the other part of who I am. That's why I was so excited at the time when Tourette syndrome and obsessive compulsive disorder were added in to a diagram like this. And it's pretty standard now for us to see those differences included in this type of a diagram. Because I'd worked with folks over many years who were saying to me, Donna, I have dyslexia, I have ADHD, but I also have Tourette's. And actually work are pretty good at supporting me about my dyslexia, my ADHD, but they never speak to me about my Tourette's or my OCD. And actually, that person would go on to say, maybe they're scared to talk about it. I think people think it's a medical issue and so on. So I genuinely think, and I'd love to hear your thoughts because we will finish a wee bit early if anyone's got any questions or thoughts to share. For me, it was a positive that those differences were acknowledged in the family of neurodiversity because I felt like it brought down barriers in terms of people and organisations being more comfortable to share of themselves and those parts of who they were. I'm married to somebody who has obsessive compulsive disorder, and I know he's delighted that it's classed as neurodiversity. It makes him more confident to speak about it. And, those who he's sharing with are thinking, okay, yeah, we get it. It's part of being neurodivergent. So, yes, we see these differences here. We have dysgraphia, for example, and this is an interesting one. So, some of the work that I do here at Succeed is that we are part of a coalition with the Adult Dyslexia Centre, Hampshire Dyslexia Association, and Yorkshire Rose Dyslexia Association, where we offer free monthly webinars aimed at the adult community. And we had so many adults saying, can you talk about dysgraphia? And it's really interesting, that difference, because here in the UK, we are pretty bad at identifying it, and it's not really seen as a standalone difference. And that's where we see as well, guys, that when we look at these differences, although they're in the same family, they're all in a slightly different place in terms of the identification, how we may see ourselves with that difference, our lived experience of those differences. And certainly dysgraphia is one which I think people who live with that difference feel very misunderstood and unsupported. So we'd ran a session on dysgraphia, and honestly, we were so inundated with questions and so on. So that's a difference that's, although been around for a long while, it's one that for some reason we don't speak a lot about. And as I say, in the UK, unfortunately, we haven't got a clear pathway through, certainly for us adults, in order to get identified as well. So as I say, I don't want to spend too long looking at this, the neurodivergent family, if you like, but I just wanted to pop it up because I wanted to make sure that on the back of what we're going to talk about this evening, that we're all pretty familiar with what we're looking at. Something else I hear a lot about as well, guys, which I'd love to share with you, and it's a really interesting idea that some of these differences carry, is the word disorder as well. So we've got ADHD, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. We've got dyspraxia there, brackets DCD. So sometimes dyspraxia is also called developmental coordination disorder. Now, a lot of the community now are starting to say, we really don't like that word, because I can't think of any context where the word disorder carries anything but a negative connotation. That being said, and I kid you not, it was the first time it's ever happened. I was with a big organisation a couple of weeks ago saying this very thing. And normally when I say it, everybody's like, yeah, we agree. Isn't disorder a horrible word? And somebody put their hand up and said, Donna, I actually like the word disorder, because what I don't want us to get to is a place where difference is used to just become a nothing word. And she was talking about how she felt that if we get to the point where all we ever talk about is differences, because we're all different anyway, whether we're neurodivergent or not, she was saying that she felt that unfortunately she was nervous that these differences, or whatever you want to call them, disorders, she was saying, will mean that um, the differences that she lives with will lose respect and she won't get the support in the world of work. And I have not heard somebody say that before, but it started me thinking about, oh, okay, it's important that we have these conversations. So again, love to hear your thoughts at the end. But it's an interesting one, isn't it? I actually don't
Donna,
like that word. Sorry, go on,
I
Natalie.
I agree. I've started to get on more on board with the disability concept. I
Mm.
also was a bit like, not really what I prefer difference. Like
Yes,
we're
yes,
different in some things
yeah,
in a good way, some things in a bad way. And someone explained to me, I'm gonna butcher this, but the concept of disability in like social disability, and they're basically saying, the world is not built for you, and that's the reason why it is still considered a disability.
yes,
And I think the concept of not necessarily seeing you as the problem, but the construct around you has really helped me kind of understand why people feel a little bit more connected with wanting to call it a disability and wanting to tick that box when they see it as an employer, like, are you disabled? And
yes.
there's that hesitation over dyslexia. So yeah, I think it's definitely a really interesting conversation, and it's definitely one that I think individuals find their own way with it.
Yeah, I agree. It's really interesting, Natalie, and this is the time we're in, guys, isn't it? Where we've got lots of these conversations happening, and I agree with you. It's really important the differences are classed as a disability because we've got to protect our rights under here in the UK, the Equality Act, for example. It's that word disorder then as well, which, yeah, it's really interesting because I'd not heard somebody defend the word disorder before, and this lady did. And kind of what you'd said, Natalie, in the context of a disability, she felt that if we went too far down the road of, in quotes, differences, eventually we will lose the status that our differences have as disabilities. So, yes, interesting times, guys. I've lost count of the amount of folks who said to me, Donna, it's the best of times and the worst of times around neurodiversity. So, yeah, it's interesting.